The moment the lights dimmed, the entire auditorium seemed to inhale at once. It wasn't just anticipation, it was something rawer, almost fragile, the collective hope of people who had come searching for answers they weren't even sure existed anymore. For months, America had felt like a pressure cooker: rising tensions, economic strain, families divided not only by geography, but by belief, fear, exhaustion. You could hear it in everyday conversations and see it on the faces of people waiting for buses, attending school board meetings, stacking groceries at discount stores. Everyone felt the heaviness. Everyone felt the urgency. That was the atmosphere as Robert Kennedy Jr. stepped onto the stage. The event's title, A Conversation About America's Future, had sounded unassuming, almost vague, yet the venue filled quicker than organizers predicted. Parents with small children, college students with phones ready to record, veterans in worn jackets, retirees clutching notebooks as if they might catch wisdom like falling rain. Kennedy didn't arrive with a grand entourage, no thunderous entrance music. He walked out quietly, nodding to the audience, settling behind a simple wooden podium as though he were sitting down to talk with old friends. But his expression carried the weight of a man who understood the stakes of the moment. He opened with a slow, steady voice, one that carried the tone of someone who had been listening more than talking. "America," he said, "is tired. I know you feel it. I feel it too." The words landed like a truth people had been waiting to hear someone admit out loud. No sugarcoating, no glossy optimism, just honesty. He spoke of the deep fractures running through the nation, the rising cost of living, the emotional fatigue spreading through classrooms, the unseen battles nurses and first responders fight daily, the loneliness that technology has somehow managed to magnify rather than heal. But woven through his words was something else, a kind of delicate hope that didn't deny the darkness, but refused to bow to it. Then came the moment that transformed the gathering from a speech into something unforgettable. From the back of the room, a woman of 40 or maybe 50, with tired eyes and a jacket that looked too thin for the cold outside, rose to her feet. She didn't move like someone preparing to make a political point. She moved like someone carrying a burden. Her hand trembled as she gripped the microphone handed to her. Her voice cracked immediately. "What a broken bar do you honestly see for America's future?" It wasn't the question itself that electrified the room. It was the tone, fragile, pleading, almost afraid of the answer. "Do we still have a future worth believing in? Are we too far gone? Is there anything left to give our children?" Kennedy didn't rush to respond. He looked at her for a long, quiet moment, his brows softening, and not as a politician, but as a human being. Then he spoke. "I see a country that's bruised, yes, but a country that still reaches for one another in the dark." The room stilled. "I see people who have been underestimated for too long. Parents working double shifts who still make it home in time to check their children's homework. Teachers who stay after class to talk to a student who's struggling. Volunteers rebuilding houses after storms. A broken bar not because they have time, but because they have heart." He shared the story of the single mother in Detroit who worked 3 jobs and cared for her aging father without complaint. "When I asked her how she managed," he said, "she told me, a mother's feet don't get to rest, they just keep moving." He told them about the young man in Phoenix who turned his battle with addiction into a mission to help others climb out of the same darkness. He told me, "If I can rebuild myself, then we can rebuild anything." Kennedy wasn't painting stereotypes, he was stitching together the quiet resilience of millions whose stories are rarely told. Then he leaned slightly forward, his voice lowering, becoming almost intimate. "America's future isn't determined by the loudest arguments, it's shaped by the smallest acts of courage, the ones no camera ever films, the ones you do when nobody is watching." A murmur rolled through the audience, soft, emotional. People looked at one another not through the lens of politics, but through shared humanity. Couples held hands. Young people lifted their phones but found themselves lowering them again, choosing to simply listen. For the first time in months or maybe years, strangers in a room full of differences felt connected. But the moment that truly broke the room came near the end of his answer. Kennedy looked slowly across the auditorium, his gaze settling on that woman who had asked the question. America's future is not a prediction, it's a choice. And every day we decide whether fear writes the next chapter, broken bar, or hope does. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Then, almost miraculously, as if on cue, silence engulfed the room. Not the cold silence of uncertainty, but the reverent silence of people feeling something deeply. A silence that felt like the first breath after a long cry. Moments later, applause erupted, and not explosive, not chaotic, but powerful. It built from the back, spreading like a wave, rising until nearly every person in the room was on their feet. Some clapped through tears, others simply nodded with solemn gratitude. Outside the building, after the event, small groups didn't disperse immediately. They lingered in the hallways and on the sidewalks, not to argue about politics but to talk about their own lives, their fears, their kids, their dreams. A college student whispered to her friend, "I didn't know I needed to hear that." A retired truck driver muttered, "Feels like someone finally understands what we're going through." It wasn't that Kennedy gave a perfect answer. It was that he gave a true one, a human one. One that reminded people of something they had forgotten in the noise. America is not just a country, it's its people. And those people still have fight left in them. As the last of the crowd drifted into the night air, the question of the evening echoed in their minds. Not what will America become, but who will we choose to be? And perhaps that was the message no one expected but everyone needed. Sometimes the answer that leaves a room speechless is the one that reminds us that hope, however small, still lives in all of us.